meeting of Board of Zoning Appeals to order. As soon as I quit feeding back. All right, first thing on the agenda then is roll call. So Mark. Here. Eric. Miss Cicely. Also present, we have our codes official Rosalie and I'm sorry, I forgot. Amber, yeah. We were just talking about memory a little while ago, weren't we? All right, we do have a quorum, I guess. So next thing on the agenda is approval of minutes, and we do have 2 meetings worth of minutes should be in your packet. So I'll give you a minute to review the minutes from the 11th, August 11th. And then I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Motion by Eric,
I'll second.
second by Cicely. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay. Review the next set of minutes from September 8th.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Cicely. Second by Mark.
Yep.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay. We do now have Miss Kendra. So. Next item on the business on the is any changes to the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Mark. Second.
I'll second.
Second by Eric. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the agenda as presented, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item then is if anybody from the public has anything to say. I don't see anybody from the public, so I'll say we can probably skip over that. We don't have any old business. As far as I know, we don't have any new business. So I guess you're up, Rosalie, with training. Remember, if you have questions, this goes for any of you, please use the mic because we are being recorded.
Thank you very much. So you'll see in your packet that there is a handout that we will have a presentation on the National Flood Insurance Program, as well as we'll be talking about some flood zones and why it matters and how important the BZAe and the Planning Commission is when we're dealing with floodplain management. It makes a difference. So this will be in your packet that you can take notes, and bear with me. This is the first time I've done the presentation during the BZAe using the technology, and we've got our fingers crossed. Let's see what we can do here. Okay, so the National Flood Insurance Program. So What does NFIP stand for? It's National Flood Insurance Program. It's important because it allows the community where they have been approved for this to get flood insurance at a reduced cost for that. We do have flood zones in this county. And then also too, it allows us to be eligible for certain type of grants and disaster recovery. So let's go to the next slide. And this will be a video.
When disaster strikes, many communities don't have the resources they need to rebuild. Thankfully, there is assistance for communities in times of need. Section 1206 of the Disaster Recovery Reform Act, or DRRA, authorizes the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, to provide communities with the resources necessary to get on the path to recovery faster. This is the story of Maria, a local floodplain administrator from the city of Oakdale that was just devastated by a hurricane. As part of her community's floodplain management regulations, the city requires that substantially damaged structures be repaired to meet current flood standards. This reduces future impacts and helps strengthen community resilience. Maria must determine which structures are substantially damaged to stay in good standing with the National Flood Insurance Program, or NFIP. In previous smaller events, she completed these assessments with only the town manager. However, given the severity of the damage, Maria needs additional resources to help her community rebuild. Maria receives a call from the state NFIP coordinator, who informs her of new activities that are now eligible for reimbursement through FEMA's Public Assistance, or PA program. Maria recalls a meeting with FEMA and the state several months ago. FEMA explained that the DRRA 1206 policy allows communities to receive reimbursement for administering and enforcing building code and floodplain management ordinances following a presidential disaster declaration. DRRA 1206 has two main principles. 1. Increase the overall speed of recovery by helping complete post-disaster activities, and 2. Enhance compliance with state and local building codes and floodplain management ordinances. FEMA will reimburse communities for PA-eligible activities performed within 180 days of the declaration and includes building code administration, code enforcement, floodplain management regulation, administration, and enforcement, and substantial damage determinations. Eligible work must relate to the repair, replacement, or retrofit of disaster-damaged properties. Successful reimbursement for eligible DRRA 1206 activities requires close collaboration between state and local partners. Key stakeholders should define their roles and responsibilities in advance of a disaster. As the floodplain administrator, Maria knows that Oakdale needs to be in good standing with the NFIP and must assess buildings in her community for substantial damage. Based on Maria's understanding of Oakdale's resources, she asks herself some questions to identify the community's needs. Do I have enough staff to collect substantial damage information and data to enforce the building codes and floodplain management regulations? If not, FEMA will reimburse communities for the cost of hiring temporary workers, surge staff, and contract work under PA Category G. Permanent employees can also be reimbursed for overtime. Do I have the resources necessary for processing disaster-related floodplain permits and reviewing disaster-related development for compliance? If not, communities can be reimbursed for hiring, training, and licensing staff to process permits and reviewing and inspecting the development. Does my community need to hire staff or purchase or lease equipment to conduct substantial damage operations? If so, hiring staff or buying supplies and equipment necessary to conduct substantial damage activities is covered. Is there a way I can work with others to help our community fill these needs? Yes, After a disaster, communities can leverage resources through the Emergency Management Assistance Compacts and intrastate or interlocal mutual aid agreements to secure the resources needed for substantial damage operations and other floodplain management administration and enforcement activities. Thanks to the DRRA 1206 policy, the costs of these services can now be reimbursed. Maria now understands the eligibility requirements for seeking reimbursement for activities eligible under FEMA's PA program because of DRRA 1206. Then, Maria's phone rings. It's a FEMA official. She's reaching out to check in on Maria's post-disaster floodplain management support needs. Maria explains that she is familiar with eligible DRRA 1206 activities and states her intention to submit a project worksheet, knowing that Oakdale plans to complete eligible work. Recovery efforts have been underway, and Maria is ready to submit the documentation she's been collecting to be reimbursed. She coordinates with Oakdale's PA point of contact, the local emergency manager, to submit a request for assistance on PA Grants portal. Once the request is approved, Maria can coordinate to submit a project and claim expenses for the damages and costs beyond her community's normal, ongoing operations. Maria feels a weight lifted off her shoulders. Empowered by the resources now available to her through DRRA 1206, she is ready to take on the post-disaster activities that previously felt overwhelming. From promoting building code enforcement to conducting substantial damage assessments, Section 1206 unlocks reimbursement to help her community recover faster and stronger. Maria feels secure knowing her community is on a steady path to recovery. To learn more about these new PA-eligible activities, visit FEMA.gov to review the policy and view frequently asked questions. You can also reach out to your regional FEMA office, state NFIP coordinator's office, or state emergency management agency.
Thank you so very much. I was very concerned about that speaker and didn't want to experience the feedback again. So FEMA is managing the NFIP. Again, that's the National Floodplain Insurance Program. It was created by Congress in 1968. Here in Trousdale County, we adopted the FEMA program in 2010. That means everything that they had come together, creating different flood zones, categorizing it. It's a long, lengthy process. It aims to reduce the flood risk and provides affordable, again, flood insurance and encourages sound floodplain management practices. I know I've been talking a lot about our county. We do have a lot of different flood zones in our county due to the fact that we have a beautiful location next to the Cumberland River, which is being utilized by the barges that you see carrying the different pipe. We have a lot of streams and creeks and things of that nature, so that we do have a lot of different flood zones. So why should the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Planning Commission be concerned with flood zones, floodplain management? Well, here are some of the key terms. The special flood hazard area, so that's within the annual 1% annual chance of flooding is also called the 100-year floodplain. So when people come to the Board of Zoning Appeals, one of the things that they can ask for is a variance, right? A property variance. Sometimes that might be due to having a flood zone issue on their property. Maybe setbacks can't be met, things of that nature. So you guys looking at variances need to be concerned about that. Now, the Planning Commission, every time that they approve a subdivision, they review a zoning change or make recommendations on development in a flood-prone area. They also can be impacted by what happens with the NFIP. So they have to really look at, okay, what does this mean? What is this going to do? And in fact, this evening, they will be looking at an item that is in a flood zone, and they need to be cognizant of what that type of project that's going to be in there, how's that going to impact the area? So the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Planning Commission do help make sure that floodplain management is stable. Now, we were going and I started talking about these terms. So when you start talking to a lot of these floodplain managers, they start throwing around all these different acronyms, you know, the BFE firm, LOMA, certificate of elevation, CLE, all that other kind of stuff. It pays to look at, okay, what does that mean exactly? So the special flood hazard area, that is all the different zones. Now, you can go into the TN property viewer and see the FEMA map can be loaded onto the TN property viewer. So for instance, anytime somebody calls our office and they're saying, hey, we're looking at buying this piece of property. What can you tell us about it? What's allowed on that property? You know, am I able to build on that property? Is it commercial, whatever? So we answer those questions. We look it up on TN Property Viewer. We also let them know, oh, you have a little bit of a flood zone on your property and it's zoned A or AE. Now, what is loaded onto TN Property Viewer is the FEMA flood maps and the flood insurance rate map. So the firm, anytime that we do building permits, back when it was all paper, I would have to log what type of flood map I was looking at, and usually it's the D firm. So, and that's the official map that shows flood zones, base flood elevation. And the base flood elevation is the expected water surface elevation during a base flood. And that is like, okay, floods that happen like once every 100 years. Now, the letter of map amendment, that is if something were to happen. For instance, somebody buys a piece of property and it's in the flood zone. Well, they think, okay, you know, I'd like to see if I can get this out of the flood zone. Are they able to do that? Why? They can. It may cost some money. They may have to go in and start building up the pad. We've been talking about a project that's going on where people are building up pads in order to get it out of the flood zone so that they can build on that property and not have to meet certain building criteria in order to maintain the eligibility of still being in the NFIP. And we'll get into this too. There's different things that they have to do. So the goals of the NFIP, you know, why did it even start? Provides access to federally backed flood insurance. We talked about that. It encourages communities to adopt and enforce floodplain regulations, because just because you join it once, does that mean one and done? No. You can become non-compliant and they can take you out of the NFIP. And then that makes it more difficult for those that are starting to experience damage from floods to be able to be reimbursed for the damages that happen. Another goal is to reduce future flood losses and promote awareness of flood risk. So how does it work? The community participates in the program. Again, it's voluntary, but it is required to access the insurance. I don't know, have any of you ever tried to obtain flood insurance? Try to get some quotes on what it might be to get some flood insurance for your property? Affording it was, wasn't it? Really? Oh my. Oh my. I know some of these businesses here in, especially in the downtown area, you know, we're all in a flood zone and they need to get flood insurance. And by utilizing the NFIP, they will start giving you different resources, people that you can contact in order to get more affordable flood insurance in case something were to happen. All right. So what does the NFIP require from us local governments? Again, it was the firms, the maps. We have to make sure that we start consulting the maps, and that's what we do. Anytime we issue a building permit, we make sure, for instance, some people decided that they wanted to have a garage. So they bought one of those ready-made garages, sheds that can be just delivered to the property, and they started preparing for it. And they hadn't contacted us about it. Well, they were going to try to put it where a tip of it was going to be in the flood zone, which impacts the installation of that. They have to go and get a certificate of elevation. Yeah, if any part of the building touches the flood zone, that means the whole building's in the flood zone, and you have to act accordingly. So it pays to know. So you have to identify the special flood hazard areas. And again, I kind of mentioned that we have Zone A, Zone AE. There's different ones around the coastal areas. But mostly what we have here is Zone A, Zone AE. You may see a type X, and X means that it's not in a flood zone. What do you watch out for? And I think we will hold off on the video. These will be available. I'll send out the handout and you'll get the different links. So this is what happens when you have flood waters start hitting structures. Debris starts impacting the structure. How many of you remember when we had the Nashville got flooded and you started seeing all these buildings? I mean, the TV covered it all and you were seeing buildings just kind of floating down the river, different things, and they were bumping up against other structures. Well, that is going to damage that foundation wise, and there's different forces that will come into that play. Just like that, grocery cart. So also, I just love that little shark there. If you guys have ever been to the beach and you started walking out into the water and you thought, oh, this is nice and tranquil, then all of a sudden you started feeling these tugs on your legs. And I'm not talking fish, I'm talking the water trying to pull you back out into the water, right? Those are the hydro forces. And again, that will impact the integrity of your structure. So flood control is confined, limit, or control the runoff characteristics of a water course through structural means such as dams and levees. You know, that's what really impacted a lot down in New Orleans, was that the levees lost its integrity and all that water started going in the downtown area there. Floodplain management identifies and recognizes hazards associated with runoff characteristics of a watercourse and develop floodplains safely. And what they mean by develop floodplains safely is that you have to manage what goes in that area. How is it going to impact? Because, and I hear it all the time, you know, I've lived here all my life and that area has never flooded. But FEMA came in, designed our flood map based on all the different data that they had, and it is in a flood zone. We still have to be cognizant of that because A lot of times, you've got the 100-year floodplain and then you got the 500-year floodplain. Just because it hasn't doesn't mean it won't. And if they have new data, and in fact, it's happened before where you've got a letter of map change. You can go and have the flood map changed through the use of a certified surveyor that will go there and analyze, will shoot the grade and get all that data together, and then they can file that with FEMA and have the zoning map, not the zoning map, the flood map changed. All right, here's the flood zone overview. Zone A, high risk, no base flood elevation. Zone AE, high risk, and the base flood elevation is determined. Zone X, moderate to low risk. And then that one zone that I was telling you about that's around the coastal areas, that's zone VE. So looking at this picture here, you see where the red arrows are indicating, okay, this is absolutely a floodplain. You can already see the meandering water course there. It looks very tranquil right now. But you can tell just by looking at the picture and the terrain there that at some point in time, there has been a lot of water go through that area. So mandatory requirement, federally regulated or insured lenders must require flood insurance. And on different properties that we've had developed here even within the urban services, there was some flood zone on the property. When the new structure was built, the new house was built, I had to go and verify the setbacks and log those and send it on a specialized form for the lender, showing that, because even when you show them the FEMA flood map, you show them the site plan, they still wanted absolute calculations. This one lender did on what the measurement was of where the house was placed on that particular lot. Applies to buildings in the SFHA. Insurance must be maintained for the life of the loan, which what AB was saying, kind of rough, tough to get rid of. There we go. So community responsibilities, it's enforcing the floodplain management regulations. And we're going to be hearing a little more about that too later on. Maintain records and documentation. We do have all type of records that we've had where houses that have built on lots that do have some type of flood plain on them. Those that would like to build in a certain type of flood zone, they can, but they have to meet strict building guidelines for that. They have to meet the code. The ICC does have regulations on how you can build a living structure in different types of flood zones. We have to review permits to ensure compliance with firm and participate in NFIP updates and training. In fact, I was showing Amber in the office back in 2023, I had to do a 3-day floodplain management training. And at that time, they weren't doing in-person training. It was all online and you had to download the handbook. And it was basically this thick with information, in 3 days, 8 hours a day of floodplain was very informative. So the benefits of the NFIP participation, again, access to the federal flood insurance, disaster assistance eligibility. As you saw in the video, when that happened, FEMA did contact them and made it where they could have extra resources and payment for the assistance that they needed in order to, once a disaster happens, you have to go out and you have to evaluate exactly what type of damage it is the structure livable? And there's just different levels in order to receive different grant levels as well. Reduce flood risk and losses and enhances community resilience. Another incentive program. So integrating flood risk into planning. So, and this is talking about Waverly, and this was done, this is a presentation that I obtained from Amanda Harrington, who wasn't able to be here this evening. This is talking about Waverly back in 2021. If you recall, we had an instance in East Tennessee just within this last year where stormwater runoff and flood zones and just the terrible weather that they endured in East Tennessee. All of this had to be mitigated as well and taken care of and evaluated. But again, it's very, very important. So they were talking about a level 3 state of emergency that was declared here, and I'm looking at our time, making sure that we have enough time. So as many as 4,200 customers were left without power, 3,500 of whom were in Humphreys County. I know we really haven't had this type of disaster affect Trousdale County in a very long time. I know we have had some flood concerns through the downtown area, even back, my goodness, was it early 1900s? When did we have another where it took out some of the records in the bottom of the courthouse, things of that nature? We've had some flood concerns here in Trousdale, but nothing to this extent, I believe.
Backwater flood is what she called it. She and my mother and some neighbors on a rowboat came through the front door of the courthouse this way. Went through and went out the back door. Paddling away.
Wow.
There's a knock downstairs on the wall.
So there's a notch downstairs, how high the water got and down. Okay. Wow.
Also,
So is it important to us here in Trousdale County? I think so. Excuse me. Thank goodness. So what can you do as a planning commissioner or boards of zoning appeals member? Here are different resources. Again, I'll be sending this out to everybody so that you can have the links, but also in our county ordinances or our, what are we calling this? Combined ordinances. You will see that there are ordinances that are dealing strictly with floodplain management. So whenever something comes forward, some variance for the Board of Zoning Appeals or something like that, special exception, we'll always be making account and looking at, okay, is there any type of floodplain that has to be considered when we make these decisions? And I put in here this, excuse me. This is a copy of a firm map. And just to kind of give you an idea of where this is, because there's different squares, because they really go into a lot of detail. This firm map, you can see over here towards the left, that is our high school. The road that is kind of bisecting the middle of the map there, that is McMurray Boulevard. Looking at the different colors on this floodplain map, So the candy stripe, that always indicates a floodway. Now, a floodway, you are not to restrict the flow of water. Water will always flow in a floodway. Okay? So what is the zone that is next to the floodway there? It's kind of highlighted. What zone is that? AE, that's correct. And AE is the one that has the base flood elevation notated, that has been measured. Now, the other zone that is on this map is what zone? A. And that's the one where the base flood elevation has not been logged. Okay? So any questions about this? This is basically the end of the training. You have a lot more information, slides in your training packet. Again, I'll be sending this out. I'll have another link to a video that you can watch. What questions might you have about this so far?
So you said,
I still think, but
It is not.
I was still principal in middle school, there was a fear that the dam in Kentucky, I think it's the Cumberland Dam, if it busted, or they were afraid it was gonna, bust open, and that flood waters would come down here and would actually engulf downtown Hartsville. But the high school was designated as a flood recovery area for everybody to go to. That's it.
I think you're right. I remember that. So I know we kind of live up on a hill and it's like, okay, I think we'll be all right. Because
A lot of water to get up here. And so one of the things I wanted to make sure to look at was how close did it get to my house? And it wasn't very close at all. But, hopefully people did that, so we kind of had an idea of where you might stand in that. And I guess what we're talking about is applying the new field house at the school board field, athletic facility over there, why it's elevated 7 feet, is to meet the requirements. We sure didn't want to build it that high if we didn't have to. Added probably $500,000 to that project. But in order to meet floodplain regulations, we had to do it.
indeed. All right. Well, that concludes our training on the NFIP and the different flood zones.
Sure, I guess.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Does the book get thinner? Okay, thank you, Rosalie. Yeah, it does. It does get thinner. All right, next thing on the agenda then is a report from chairman. I got nothing. Rosalie, anything you want to tell us? I'm sure building permit applications are way down.
Actually, Not so much. It's more, because all the different subdivisions that have been approved, that have got their engineering set up, they are about ready to start pulling their permits. So over there, the Goose Creek off of Sam Beasley, they're about ready to start pulling their permits. And so no, it really hasn't slowed down. And the solar array has pulled their permit. So it's still very interesting.
So they are getting ready to begin construction out there then on their solar array.
They are wanting to break ground by the end of October. Yes, sir. Enbridge for the solar array.
What about the property beside the high school? Are they still planning on developing it?
I have not heard any word on that, and I do know that it is for sale.
I think that funding fell for, the original people that had put in a bid, I think that funding fell through. But I'm sure the Welsh would be glad to sell it to.
He says yes. Well, all right. Anything else? Otherwise, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mark, second by Eric. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.